This paper investigates acoustic cues to prominence in the entire utterance and how they're related to categories of information structure in Egyptian Arabic. In many languages, prosody is a powerful means to signal information structure, specifically focus. The categories of information structure used in the present paper are focus, topic, and contrast. Broad focus is when the entire utterance presents new information. So, for example, in response to a question, what happened? Narrow focus means when only one item presents the new information, like when we ask who ate the cookies, in the response, John ate the cookies, John is the information focus. Narrow focus can also be contrastive. So when we ask who ate the cookies, John or Joe, John ate the cookies, John would be a contrastive focus. Topic is what the sentence is about, and topics are usually given, followed by new information. So a ratified or continuous topic is when we continue to speak about the same referent. So what did John do? John stole the cookies. John is known before and he's a continuous topic. A contrastive topic would be if there are two topics at the same time standing in contrast. So like in this sentence, Sue at the hamburger and John at the cookies, Sue and John are contrastive. In West Germanic languages, narrow focus is usually signaled by strong prominence and deaccentuation of the post-focus domain. So in our case here, it's the verb phrase, the VP domain. Egyptian Arabic practically has no deaccenting, but we know from previous work that focus and topic are usually signaled by different accent types. So a focus is usually related or correlated with a sharp rise fall, whereas a topic is signaled by a plain rise. Now the research questions for the present presentation are whether there are any post-focal cues to the focus background partition, and specifically if there is any post-focus compression, which has been suggested for various languages that do not deaccent. The second question is related to broad focus. We want to know how it is realized across the whole utterance. And third, we want to see whether contrast has an effect on topic and focus, and not only on the first word itself, the topic or the focus, but also on the rest of the utterance. Our data comes from 17 speakers of Egyptian Arabic, 11 females and 6 males, whom we roughly divided into 3 age groups, and we only used 1,027 items for analysis. We only used those items of the whole data set that exhibited a slight downstep within the VP domain to make the utterances comparable. On the right-hand side, you can see a target sentence of our data set put into 5 information structure conditions. And the narrow focus, so contrastive or information focus, is signaled with red color, and topic is signaled in green, and broad focus with yellow. And we'll be using these colors to signal the information structure categories throughout the paper.
The first word in all our utterances is the narrow focus or topic, and the last 2 words are the verb phrase. We extracted 10 acoustic measures for this study, but will only present 8 of them here. We extracted 4 F0 measures, 2 absolute ones, the maximum in word 1 and the minimum in word 3, and 2 relative ones. First, the difference between the maxima in word 1 and 2 to indicate downstep, and second, the difference between the maximum in word 2 and the minimum in the last word to indicate post-focus or post-topic compression in the verb phrase domain. We extracted 2 mean intensity measures. First, the difference between the first and the second word, analogous to F0 downstep, and second, the mean intensity of the last word to indicate reduction at the end of the utterance. And we extracted two duration measures, the duration of the utterance and the relative duration of the verb phrase. We built linear mixed effects regression models for each of the 10 acoustic measures, with the dependent variables information structure condition and the nuisance variables age, sex, and repetition and their interaction with information structure condition, and the random variables speaker and sentence. In the results, we'll present the estimated marginal means of the 8 acoustic features I just described and the pairwise comparisons of the 5 information structure conditions with a Bonferroni correction averaged over the levels of the nuisance variables. These 3 measures tell us something about the whole contour of the utterance. The maximum F0 in word 1 was higher for narrow focus than all other information structure conditions. And we can see here in the leftmost plot that the broad focus groups with narrow focus. Also, the highest F0 in word 1 was higher for contrastive topic than for ratified topics. The F0 at the end of the tune was lower for contrastive focus than all other information structure conditions. And we see a similar picture for the duration of the whole utterance, which was also lower for contrastive focus than all other information structure conditions. Here are 2 measures for the initial downstep between word 1 and word 2. On the left-hand side, we see the F0 downstep, and then on the right-hand side, the intensity drop between the first and second word. And we see a similar picture for both of them in that narrow focus had a higher downstep and a higher intensity drop than all other conditions. And F0 downstep as well as intensity drop was higher for contrastive focus than information focus. And here you can see that broad focus groups with the topics and not with narrow focus. We see similar results for all 3 measures of post-focus compression. The leftmost plot here is a bit counterintuitive. Lower values for the difference between the F0 and the second and third word indicate a higher degree of F0 compression. So in the leftmost plot, we see that the F0 compression in the verb phrase was higher, lower values in the plot, but it means higher compression in narrow focus than in the other conditions, and higher in contrastive focus than in information focus. For the relative duration of the verb phrase, we also found lower values for narrow focus than all other conditions. And for the mean intensity at the end of the tune, we also found lower values for narrow focus than all other conditions and lowest values for contrastive focus in comparison to information focus.
To conclude, we did find prosodic reflexes of information structure across the entire utterance, and we also found some independence of individual cues. For example, we found higher pitch on focus accompanied by post-focus compression after narrow focus. The same is true for intensity and duration. We found lower intensity and duration values in the VP after narrow focus. We found very weak articulation at phrase end after narrow focus and specifically after a contrastive narrow focus. And as far as broad focus is concerned, we found that the first word was scaled almost as high as in the narrow focus condition, but there was no reduction of prominence in the VP. This indicates that new actually raises prominence and pitch register. And concerning contrast, we found that in narrow focus, contrast was signaled specifically by the lower prominence in the post-focus domain. That means in the VP, but not on focus. Whereas a topic was signaled by higher prominence of the topic itself. And thank you for your attention, and these are some references.